Naya. Vedanta Society is honored to host Swami Medhananda, who is going to speak on Kalipada Ghosh in this series of household disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. It's become a kind of a truism that what is the strength to measure a saint or anybody? To make a good person better, it's easy. But to make a person who's wayward, transform it into something really good, a saint, and not only a saint, but also to patiently go step by step through this transformation. Kalipada Ghosh was one that saw an immense kind of transformation. It's a hope for all of us that these lives which are presented by the society for the last 1 year gives us hope and courage to come to Sri Ramakrishna. And this is the test of all the devotees who have come to Sri Ramakrishna. They feel his transformative power. Today, Swami Medhananda, who is a monk of the Ramakrishna order stationed at Vedanta Society of Southern California, Hollywood. And he's got very impressive credentials. I won't go into that because it will take a lot of time. Instead of him speaking about Kalipada Ghosh, I'll be speaking about him. So those who are interested for the full treatment can come on Sunday, where we are going to host Mother's Luncheon, and Swami Medhananda will speak on one of the most important teachings and the last teachings of Holy Mother to all of us. Suffice it to say, we've been we've seen each other, we have met and spoken, but who knew that we one day would be here together on the same platform, and I'm introducing him, and oh God, this is Maya, as they say. I wish we knew, we could see in the future, so we would have become even closer then. I leave Swami Medhananda to speak about Kalipada Ghosh.
Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarva dharma swarupini avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Is the mic okay? Yeah, I think it's okay. My humble pranams to revered Swami Bhaskaranandji Maharaj and revered Swami Satyamanandji Maharaj. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. As Maharaj mentioned, he's known me longer than most monks in our order, actually, because I first met him in Mayavati when he was editor of Prabuddha Bharata, our English language journal, up in the high Himalayas, when I was doing a 6-month pilgrimage throughout India before joining the order, early 2010. And I remember then that he was a very charismatic, dynamic personality. He was very inspiring to me at that point. So I'm very grateful and honored that he's invited me here. It's a real treat, and it's a treat to meet all of you. Thank you so much for coming. So Maharaj asked me to speak on Kalipada Ghosh. I wanted to mention something first. Sri Ramakrishna, he had many illustrious disciples. We all know that. In fact, Chaitanyaji wrote an entire book called They Lived with God. Right? I always get the things confused. One book is They Live with God, the other is God Lived with Them. One of them is devoted to describing the lives of the future monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, starting with Swami Vivekananda, then ranging through Swami Brahmananda, Shivananda, all the great monastic disciples. There's a whole separate book written by Swami Chaitanyaji on the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. That's the focus of the series that Swami Satyamananda has been running. And even among the householder disciples, there are some truly extraordinary ones. Nag Mahashaya is one of them. He had so much detachment, so much, he had such a spirit of renunciation that even though he was married, instead of sleeping in bed with his wife, he'd be sleeping on the branch of a tree. You know, we hear these things and we're kind of awestruck. But one thing that's sometimes difficult for people, especially people who are struggling in the world, is to relate to these kinds of superhuman souls. The great monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, Nag Mahashaya. And sometimes, even some monks, they say, when we speak to each other, you know, privately, we say, if you really want something, go to Holy Mother, not to Sri Ramakrishna, because Sri Ramakrishna is tough. Holy Mother is very forgiving, she's compassionate to all, she's mother of all, so she doesn't look at your faults, but Sri Ramakrishna was tough. We say that. But among the householder disciples, if you look, you'll find Sri Ramakrishna had infinite compassion for, as Swami Satyamanji mentioned, for people who were not conventionally considered to be particularly holy people, even particularly pious. Some examples stand out. Girish Ghosh is one of the most familiar, the great Bengali playwright, who he himself said, almost with pride, I committed every sin under the sun. And he said, if I'd known that I would meet Sri Ramakrishna, such a great savior, I would have committed many more. And Binodini, the great actress Binodini, in those days, even the male parts in plays were performed by women. And so and they were considered to be unchaste. And Sri Ramakrishna bestowed such tremendous compassion on her as well. And Kalipada Ghosh is in that same line of householder disciples. Kalipada Ghosh had all sorts of, you can say, vices from a conventional standpoint. He was an alcoholic. He was abusive to his wife. He had many affairs and many other things. No point in going through the laundry list. But his life was completely transformed by the touch of Sri Ramakrishna. And honestly, I've studied all the lives of the householder disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And this is, to me, the most touching. And I want to share with you some of the transformative incidents in Kalipada Ghosh's life after meeting Sri Ramakrishna. But actually, his story begins before he meets Sri Ramakrishna, quite interestingly. He was married to a very pious woman who was very devoted to Sri Ramakrishna. And she was tormented by her husband, who was a drunkard and doing all sorts of things. In despair, his wife came to Sri Ramakrishna and said, please help me. There must be some medicine to cure my husband. She was thinking maybe of some actual medicine. But she went to the saint Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna said, okay, I'll tell you what to do. Go to Holy Mother. So he directed her to Holy Mother. She goes to Holy Mother. She tells Holy Mother everything. Holy Mother said, I'll tell you what to do. Go to Sri Ramakrishna. So they're playing this game, sending her back and forth between Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. This happened 3 times. Until finally, she comes to Holy Mother with the same request, and Holy Mother recognized her humility, her determination. And she said, okay, here's this flower, this leaf that I've offered to Sri Ramakrishna. Now I'm writing his name on that leaf. And she hands it to him, this sanctified leaf with Sri Ramakrishna's name on it. It said, take Sri Ramakrishna's name, and things will take care of themselves. For 12 full years, Kalipada's wife took Sri Ramakrishna's name faithfully. And then what happens? Swami Adbhutanandaji, one of the great monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, he's the one who narrates the story. So let me read you directly from Adbhutanandaji's reminiscence. He says, Kalipada's wife chanted the Lord's name for 12 years. When the master first met Kalipada, he remarked, this man has come here after tormenting his wife for 12 years. Sri Ramakrishna knew everything. Kalipada was startled but said nothing. Then the master asked him, what do you want? Kalipada asked shamelessly, can you give me a little wine? The master smiled. Yes, I can. But the wine I have is so intoxicating that you will not be able to bear it. Kalipada took him literally. He gets very excited and said, "Is it real British wine?" Those are the days of British occupation. It's the fancy stuff. "Please give me a little to soak my throat." "No, it is not British wine," said the master, still smiling. "It is completely homemade." Even better. "This wine cannot be given to just anyone, for not everyone can stand it. If a person tastes this wine even once, British wine will seem insipid to him ever after. Are you ready to drink my wine instead of the other?" For a moment, Kalipada was thoughtful. Adbhutananda continues. "And then I heard him say, 'Please give me that wine which will make me intoxicated my entire life.'" Sri Ramakrishna touched him, and Kalipada started to weep. We tried to calm him, but he went on weeping in spite of our attempts. See how touching this is this first encounter with Sri Ramakrishna. He completely changed his life. He was born in 1849, passed away in 1905. And in spite of all of his vices, he had many virtues, many good qualities. He actually reached a high position in a British company called Messrs. John Dickinson and Company. It was a British paper firm in Kolkata. Extremely intelligent, efficient, very generous. Everybody praised him for his generosity. And in spite of these vices, by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, his entire life was transformed. And another extraordinary incident happened in November 1884. After meeting Sri Ramakrishna for the first time, Kalipada was completely mesmerized. And he couldn't help but think about him. When can I see him again? When can I see him again? So one day he comes to Dakshineshwar to visit Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna actually wanted to go to Kolkata. And so Kalipada immediately volunteered and says, "Come by boat with me. I'll arrange everything." Sri Ramakrishna was very happy. And so on the boat was Sri Ramakrishna, Kalipada, and Adbhutananda. And Adbhutananda is the one who witnessed this firsthand and is recounting this. So right when Sri Ramakrishna got on the boat, Kalipada secretly went to the boatman and said, "When you get to the middle of the river, stop. And I'll tell you when to continue." And so right in the middle of the river, in the Ganga, the boatman stops the boat. Sri Ramakrishna is a little confused. What's going on? Why isn't the boat moving? We should be going to Kolkata, but it's stopped. And Kalipada falls down prostrate at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna in the middle of his boat, holding onto his feet, weeping, saying, "Sir, you are a savior. Please save my life." "Oh, no, no," says Sri Ramakrishna. "Chant the name of the Lord. You will get liberation." Kalipada says, "Sir, I am a wicked man and a drunkard. I do not even have time to chant the Lord's name. You are an ocean of mercy. Kindly save a ruffian such as I, who is devoid of any kind of spiritual practices, any kind of righteousness, any purity." He wouldn't let go of Sri Ramakrishna's feet. So Sri Ramakrishna thinks, what can I do? He says, "Stick out your tongue," tells Kalipada to stick out his tongue. He sticks out his tongue. He writes a mantra with his finger on his tongue. He says, "Henceforth, your tongue will automatically repeat this mantra." If Sri Ramakrishna had given us this, we'd be thrilled, right? Kalipada was not satisfied. Not good enough. He says to Sri Ramakrishna, "I don't want this." Now Sri Ramakrishna is really befuddled. Then what do you want? Kalipada says, "When I leave this world, I shall see darkness all around, and that terrible darkness will fill me with horror. My wife, children, and other relatives won't be able to help me then. At that terrible time, you will be my only savior. You will have to take me, holding a light with your left hand and me with your right hand. I shall always be with you then. You will have to fulfill this prayer of mine. And Sri Ramakrishna grants his prayer. He says, all right, your prayer will be fulfilled. My goodness, you've brought me to the middle of the Ganges and have created such a scene. So wonderful. And when we get to the end of his life, we'll see that to the letter, Sri Ramakrishna fulfilled his wish. But I'll mention a few more incidents before we get to Kalipada's final days. Kalipada had an innate devotion. I mean, some of you who are familiar with the life of Girish Ghosh will know that there are a lot of similarities here. You know, Girish Ghosh, when he went to Sri Ramakrishna, he was also a drunkard, also a debauch, and all these other things. But he had this tremendous faith and devotion. And Girish surrendered at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna said, okay, take the Lord's name twice a day, in the morning, in the evening. He said, I don't trust myself. I don't have any kind of fixed routine. I don't have any virtues. Sri Ramakrishna said, fine, then once a day, just once, clap your hands, take God's name. What's the big deal? I can't do that. I don't trust myself. And then finally, Sri Ramakrishna says, fine, then give me your power of attorney. Surrender yourself completely to me. And he does. And Girish thought, this is, wow, I don't have to do anything. This is the best. And in fact, in Kalipada's life too, it's something similar. One day, Sri Ramakrishna is talking about the benefits of doing japa, which is mental repetition of a mantra, God's name. And Sri Ramakrishna explains that it's a fairly lengthy process. You start taking God's name, maybe mechanically. Ultimately, you start developing a kind of bhava, a vyakulata, a longing for God, until finally you can realize God. Kalipada smiles and turns to the others and says, I don't have to go through all that. I have such a fine guru. He's taken care of all that business. And Girish, similarly, years after Sri Ramakrishna left his body, he would often visit Belumat and meet his brother disciples, the great monastic disciples, Swami Vivekananda, Brahmananda, all these disciples. And he would tell them, he said, when Sri Ramakrishna told me to give him the power of attorney, I thought that I was off the hook. That now I don't have to do anything. And in a sense he didn't, but he said, I didn't realize how difficult that was. What it really meant to surrender fully to Sri Ramakrishna. That it takes a lifetime to truly surrender at the feet of the divine. He said, to truly surrender, what true surrender means is, if I lift my arm, I should feel that it's God lifting my arm, that I'm not lifting my arm. If I get out of the chair, it's God using me as his instrument. Can you really feel it? Until you haven't surrendered. So for some spiritual aspirants like Kalipada, like Girish Ghosh, the main sadhana was surrender, but it was by no means easy. That itself was a very challenging spiritual practice for them. And so for Kalipada as well, it was still a journey. But with that magic touch of Sri Ramakrishna, Kalipada's life was almost instantly transformed. Eventually he gave up drinking and he became extremely devotional, full of longing for the divine. And he was also a good singer, Kalipada. So he was singing a song one day, and on another occasion, he was playing the flute. He was an accomplished flautist. And Sri Ramakrishna, listening to Kalipada's flute playing, went into a very high state of samadhi. He was also a good cook, and so devotees would call him the housewife. At that time, the housewives would cook. And I'm not mentioning all the incidents, but there's one wonderful incident I mentioned earlier in the talk, Binodini, the great actress Binodini. Sri Ramakrishna went to see a drama composed by Girish Ghosh called Chaitanya Lila, the divine play of Sri Chaitanya, the great devotee of Krishna and avatar of Krishna. And Binodini played the lead role of Chaitanya. And Sri Ramakrishna was extremely impressed. And afterward, he blessed this actress, who was also a fallen woman. And he let her touch his feet as well, which is rare, but he allowed her to. And like Kalipada, she couldn't help but think of Sri Ramakrishna when she could meet him again. In the meantime, Sri Ramakrishna had throat cancer. So he's placed in a different house in Shampukur. And the people looking after him, like Sharadanandaji and others, they were very strict about who could see him, who shouldn't see him. And she is just an ordinary lady and she doesn't have any credentials in that way. So she was thinking to herself, how can I meet Sri Ramakrishna? But remember, she's a great actress. So what did she do? Well, she told Kalipada this. She met Kalipada through Girish, because Girish was the playwright. And Kalipada came up with a brilliant plan. She said, I have an idea. So she told her the idea. She dressed up like a European gentleman. A man, a European man, with the whole, everything, the hairdo and the outfit, walking like an English gentleman. And she walks with Kalipada to Sri Ramakrishna's house, where he's staying. And Kalipada introduces her as an English gentleman, a friend of his. And so they said, oh, okay, yeah, you can bring this gentleman, especially the English gentleman. Especially at that time, there's a real prestige associated with being British, right, European. So they lead him upstairs. And then when she's alone with Sri Ramakrishna and Kalipada, she removes the clothing. And Sri Ramakrishna is very amused to see that this is Binodini. And instead of getting angry or criticizing her or scolding her for deceiving him or other people, he was very happy and said, see, this is the kind of devotion that one needs to realize God. And he blessed her again and let her touch his feet. So Kalipada played an important role in that whole wonderful incident. Another incident, this is closer to Sri Ramakrishna's, when he leaves his body in 1886. This is 11th December, 1885. Many of us know that on January 1st, 1886, New Year's Day, we call it Kalpataru Day, the day of Sri Ramakrishna as the wish-fulfilling tree. Because on January 1st, when he was in Kashipur, the garden house, toward the end of his illness, he blessed many householder disciples. May you have spiritual consciousness. And he would touch them, bless them, and each one of them had some kind of extraordinary spiritual experience. And on January 1st in India, it's quite striking. In Belumat, absolutely nothing is done. No celebration. In Kashipur, there are huge celebrations, but not in Belumat. And the reason is, monks say, why January 1st only as Kalpataru? Every day is Kalpataru Day. Sri Ramakrishna is the Nitya Kalpataru, which means he's the eternal wish-fulfilling tree. You see, even the future monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, they weren't blessed on that day. This is a special day when he blessed a select group of householder disciples, but he's constantly blessing his disciples. So that's the attitude that we should have. He's not just gracious on a particular day, he's gracious every day. But I think what's less well known is that he was a Kalpataru to yet another householder disciple a few weeks earlier than January 1st, 1886. On 11th December, 1885, he blessed, or actually 23rd December, so literally just 1 week before Kalpataru Day proper, New Year's Day, he touched Kalipada's chest and he said, may your inner spirit be awakened, which is almost exactly what he told disciples on January 1st, but he told Kalipada 8 days before. And then he was stroking Kalipada's chin. And he said, whoever has sincerely called on God or performed his daily religious devotions will certainly come here. And after that touch of the Master, Kalipada stopped drinking, became extremely devotional, extremely pious and humble. And he and Girish, who are good friends, they would sit together for long periods in front of Sri Ramakrishna's picture with tears in their eyes. And during a great kirtan celebration, a devotional celebration, they go into a state of bhava, of ecstasy, and they lose external consciousness. And another devotee garlands them with flowers. And they can only say in ecstasy, Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna. So now we fast forward to the end of his life. He passed away on 28th June, 1905. And we already know the boat incident. So did Sri Ramakrishna fulfill his promise? To the letter. And this is witnessed by Swami Premanandaji, who was there at the time of Kalipada's passing. Premananda noticed something unusual, that Kalipada lifted his hand like this, as if someone was carrying him. Just like this, and he passed away like that. Just as Kalipada breathed his last, he raised his right hand. Hearing the news of Kalipada's death from Swami Premananda, Swami Adbhutananda said to some devotees, "Look, the master came to Kalipada at his last moment. Holding Kalipada's hand, the master guided him away. Brother Baburam, meaning Premananda, saw it clearly. Whatever the master said to anyone is bound to be fulfilled." So I hope you can see why this life is so touching. And as I said, one of the things that we can learn from the lives of Binodini, Girish Ghosh, Kalipada, ordinary people in a certain sense, that Sri Ramakrishna's compassion was boundless. His love was infinite. And that he didn't play favorites in that way. And so there's hope for all of us. Thank you. We can open it to questions. Or what would you like, Manas? Yeah,
Question.
please.
So, A plus the wife. I mean, 3 times back and
Oh, yeah.
and 12 years of putting up with a complete jerk.
Mm.
Do we have any information about her?
Her future?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. It's a great question. I don't know if research has been done on that.
Oh,
It should, though.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a good project.
Yeah, many household disciples, I mean, like you said, a lot of research has to be done and much more material will be unearthed.
Yeah.
You've just touched the surface.
There's a lot of research to be done on different fronts, actually, in relation to our tradition. And that's one of them. Prabuddha Pranamataji also does research on, like, Josephine MacLeod and these other important female figures in our tradition.
How do you do the research? I mean, the people have died since then, so you can't get oral stories.
You'd have to go to newspapers. Like Mary Louise Burke did this incredible, 6-volume New Discoveries project on Swami Vivekananda, and she went to like all the different libraries and went to microfiche newspapers to see what was happening at that time when Swamiji was in different places, and so it takes a lot of hard work and.
Yeah, it's a team effort.
Yeah, it's no joke.
Yeah.
Especially for people like Kalipada's wife, she's not like a known figure. She's not a public figure. And so it'll be very difficult to track down exactly, what she was doing. It gets very difficult. Even Holy Mother, one thing, some people ask me, so I've written a book on Sri Ramakrishna's philosophy, a book on Swami Vivekananda's philosophy, and some devotees, some monks asked, so now your next book has to be on Holy Mother's philosophy. I said, I wish I could, but there's not enough material. The problem is 98% of her teachings weren't recorded. In the case of Sri Ramakrishna, we have the Kathamrita, which is a 1,200-page recording of his teachings, word for word, from Mahananda Gupta. In the case of Swami Vivekananda, he had a Goodwin, who was able to transcribe his talks, his lectures, in the West, in India. Where was the Goodwin for Holy Mother? She was surrounded by women, some of whom were educated, but even the ones who are educated, they're not taking notes and paying careful attention. So the vast majority of Holy Mother's teachings have been lost, unfortunately. Yeah. Other questions?
Forgive me if it sounds cynical. You mentioned so many householders from those days that with so much debauchery and bad behavior, and they all had Ramakrishna to save them. Today we have a lot more people in that condition. So what recourse do we have?
Sri Ramakrishna is still alive. That's the beauty of it. Just because he left his body, he's God himself. So there's no question of him. He's still here, very much here, and we can access him through devotion, through love, through prayer, any of the spiritual practices. Yeah. Remember when when Sri Ramakrishna passed away, Holy Mother was devastated. She was weeping for days. After several days, Sri Ramakrishna appeared to Holy Mother and said, why are you mourning me? I've just moved from one room to another. Exactly like that.
Yeah, Raman Maharshi said the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? There's somebody back. Yeah, you're in the dark, so I can barely see your hands. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you choose who to do research on?
See, the beauty of research is, like, I'm a researcher, so it's based on your passion. Marie-Louise Burke loved Swami Vivekananda, and so she spent her whole life doing research on Swami Vivekananda. You know, when we read the lives of different people, figures in our tradition, there's some that just speak, resonate with us more than what others do, Every one of you will have a different, if I ask you, in the book They Live with God, which of the monastic disciples which life moved you the most? Each one of you will have a different answer. Same thing with the householder disciples. So based on that, you do your research based on that. Unless it comes from a place of passion, it's not going to be deep research and it won't be good research. You'll do it mechanically. You might come up with one or two insights, but it's because Marie-Louise Burke her whole life was based on Swamiji. Her heart was with Swamiji. She was a disciple of Swami Ashokanandaji.
Yeah, in India, Shankari Prasad Bosu, he did the same research.
Yeah, in Bangla,
It's translated in English.
Yeah.
But he took the cue from Sister Gargi, Mary-Louise Burke.
Yeah, no, she did the pioneering research. I mean, it's incredible work. And others are following her footsteps. I mean, historical research. Now, as I mentioned, Prabuddha Pranamataji and others. Amrita Salm in Hollywood is doing something on, I think also, is it Jojo or someone else?
Yeah.
Oh. So, I mean, but we've just, I always think about it in relation to Christianity. Christ was crucified 0, right? And then the first few centuries after that was a period of tremendous ferment, intellectual ferment, spiritual and religious upheaval, but there was no set doctrine. There was just tremendous debate, discussion. What exactly did Christ teach? What is Christianity? Everything was up for grabs. There was Gnosticism. There are interesting books written. I recommend one, Diarmaid McDiarmid or something, a professor at Oxford, called The History of Christianity, where he talks about these things. But it took a good 400 to 500 years for Christianity to get codified into the Orthodox doctrine that we know of today. And our tradition, comparatively, is very young. Ramakrishna left his body in 1886. The order started a decade later, about. And so it's not even 150 years old, this tradition. And there's tremendous work to be done on many fronts. We were talking about research, but also laying the philosophical and spiritual and theological foundations for our tradition. It hasn't been done, really. I'm trying to do it. I'm starting in my own small way. And some of the great monks of the past are the real pioneers, like Swami Tapasanandaji and others. But a lot more work has to be done on that front as well, philosophically, theologically, and also historically, researching all the important figures in the tradition, and even the minor figures.
There was, in the old days, we had a lot of monks who used to keep diaries. Unfortunately, this generation of monks, they don't keep that. So it was those diaries that were accessed by researchers like Swami Chetanananda.
And letters also.
Letters.
People used to write these voluminous letters,
So all these things. They go to the old libraries, seek out old kind of publications, mentioning some there. It needs digging.
Yeah, there's a hand back there, and then we'll get to it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for coming. This may be an appropriate time to ask this. Do you think, in times people need to take mind-altering medications or substances, or some people choose to? Do you think it's correct to do spiritual practices if that's the case? If a person's under the influence of some mind-altering substance, or should they, refrain until they're themselves?
Right. I think that there's a more fundamental question behind that one that you asked. I mean, I can try to answer that, but I think I want to address the more fundamental question first, which is, what is the role of drug use in spiritual life? And our tradition is pretty unambiguous about it. We don't encourage it. But I want to qualify that. What I find, especially after coming, I was in India for 13 years, and then I came to Hollywood about 2 years ago. And from day one of coming here, I hear about different people's drug experiences. In fact, I'm an academic philosopher, and so I'm invited to conferences. And so I went to a conference in Amsterdam at Leiden University last year on the topic of the entropy of mystical experience. And like 98% of these people were either scientists or practitioners who are all researching spiritual experiences attained through drug use. A lot of them were taking ayahuasca, some people were taking LSD and stuff like that. So they asked me about my views about it. But the position is, on the one hand, what I find is that for some people, drugs can be, you can literally a kind of gateway drug into spirituality. It's like taking a drug for the first time, like opens their mind to possibilities beyond the ego, beyond the ordinary mind. William James, the great Harvard psychologist and philosopher, he wrote a book called The Varieties of Religious Experience, 1900. And he talked about that, how many people, through use of things like ether and other, or not ether, what's it called? Anyway, different kinds of drugs, that they had different spiritual experiences. So it could be a kind of entry point into spirituality, but once you've entered into the domain of spirituality, you really need to move beyond it. You shouldn't be taking drugs anymore. And ideally, you wouldn't be taking drugs at all. The real problem, Swami Vivekananda talks about this in Raja Yoga. He said the real problem with ingesting substances in order to induce spiritual experiences is that you're surrendering your agency to an inert substance. If you have to surrender your freedom, your agency to an external substance, you've lost the game from the beginning. You know, you need to be the one who so there are no shortcuts really in spiritual life. And if there's a shortcut, it's surrender to the divine. We just talked about Kalipada's life. That would be the right shortcut rather than through drug use. Because the danger is the body, see, the mind is not ready for it, for the kind of experience. So nobody's denying that through drug use you might experience something transcendental. That's possible. But are you ready for it? Is the mind ready for it? Many people go off the deep end mentally after they have that kind of experience. Partly because the mind's not ready for it. They're not ethically prepared and spiritually prepared to handle those kinds of experiences. And so, in general, I think it's better to... So now coming to your question specifically, which is that if you are under the influence, should you engage in spiritual practices? But again, it depends on... So, you know, look at Kalipada and look at Girish. Girish, when he was still an alcoholic, before he gave up drinking, he came to Sri Ramakrishna in despair. Sometimes he would say tremendously, I mean, really abusive things to Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna was infinitely patient. One time, Girish just got fed up with himself and said, "What can I do?" And Sri Ramakrishna said, "Here's what you do. The next time you feel an impulse to drink, offer that wine to Divine Mother first." So I think this is a good example of how, what is that? That's I mean, he's an alcoholic, he's about to drink, and Sri Ramakrishna himself is telling him to offer the drink to Divine Mother. So that's an example of somebody who's, you know, under the influence and engaging in spiritual practice. So yes, of course, you can and should. Look at, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous, the foundation of it is that you can turn hitting rock bottom into an entry point into spiritual life, right? It's when you hit rock bottom that you can open yourself to possibilities beyond the ego and to a power that's higher than, you know, ourselves, right? That's the third step in the 12-step program. Yeah, thanks. You had a question, yeah.
My question is, as you talked about, he initially led a debauched life, and after that, Ramakrishna saved him. A significant contribution of it comes from his wife itself, who prayed to Ramakrishna about it. So, about the whole story, do you think it was a fate that had to happen in his life that he had to meet Ramakrishna? Or he himself had a kind of attributes, some qualities you believe that led him to that Ramakrishna helped him in his life?
Yeah, I don't see those two options as mutually exclusive. You know, you use the word fate, but in Hinduism, we talk about karma. So yes, it was Kalipada's karma that he came into the presence of Sri Ramakrishna. You see, when an avatara comes, when God comes in human form, he comes with his entourage. There's an HBO show, Entourage, a long time ago, but the avatara comes with a spiritual entourage. And Kalipada was part of that cast. And Sri Ramakrishna would say, for a story to be a good one, to be a gripping one, you can't just have all good characters. There have to be some bad characters. Jyotila Kotila. So you need the Girishas, the Kalipadas, but actually they're all divine characters. They're all different masks that Sri Ramakrishna himself is wearing, coming here to play, with this group of people to share with the entire world. And that's why the stories of people like Kalipada are so inspiring to us. That's how I see it, at least. Yeah, other questions? I don't think that they're online questions, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you for the wonderful exposition, Kalipada Ghosh. Of course, this is just a kind of whetting your appetite for more. Go to the book, go to the literature, it's vast. Thank you once again. And as I mentioned before, Kalipada Ghosh was called Dana Kali. He was generous, he was very charitable. And his ashes later were interred in Swami Vivekananda's temple. It's one of the few things. And he helped the order tremendously all his life. Financially, yes. And so we see his life kind of reflecting Sri Ramakrishna. For more, come on Sunday at Tapovan at Arlington. And our program will begin at 11. It's a potluck. Please, you're welcome. And Swami Medhananda will speak on making the whole world one's own. Yes. And we'll have a skit by Mother's Children, and we'll have a music. And you can put some more questions to Swami Medhananda there. Okay. Just a kind of side note, just check the road closures on Sunday. So it could help you. Okay.
Thank you.
Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.